Okay, sorry, it's
No, it's not that. Yes, that's another one. And some mother-in-laws deserve that. I got one. Look. What's the difference? What's the difference between a piano and a fish? Piano and a fish. You can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish. Good deal. Shabbat shalom.
Test, 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 test. We are on. Okay. This is not on. Okay. This is weird.
One of them I unplugged because it was giving off a lot of static.
Chef, chef, chef. Well, no, I did that. Well, I that's a lot. Well, there's America, besides Israel, America has the most amount of Jewish people in the world, and then it was like France. For a lot of the French Jews,
I'm turned on. Hear how loud I am? Yeah. Test 1 2. 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 Test test. That's me, I guess. Whoa, yeah. That's me. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. That's a little bit more reasonable. Test 1 2. That's a little low. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Yeah, like that. Test 1. Okay.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Jeff, you want me to, the first song? I don't know if you can see my. I
We need you, Nancy.
I mean, we could just do Shalom Aleichem and this is whoever reads.
Nancy, it's your call. I'm.
It's this one. Yeah. You need a chart for it?
Yeah, be good if you.
Mm.
It's okay. It's okay. No, I'll
Are we in tune with these things?
I don't know.
Are we ready to go?
Oh no.
Are we starting?
Yes, please.
Okay, here we go. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malchei HaMelachim HaKadosh
Kadosh
Baruch Hu.
Page 24.
Moachem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Machoni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malchei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Everybody turn around and wave hello to everybody in YouTube land. Shabbat Shalom,
Shabbat
Chag
Shalom.
Sameach. Hi, Mom. We wish you were here. I wish I was there. And if Nancy were here, I'd ask her to come and light the candles. Seth, would you light the candles? Would you light the candles?
Check, check.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. And bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our tefillah, worship, lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu Lehadlik Shel Shabbat.
Please join us on page 5. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratavanu Shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron ma'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh Zecher L'Tziat Mitzrayim, which is particularly appropriate right now at this time of the year. Kivanu v'chata, Yotanu kidashta, Mikol hamim, V'shabbat kodshecha, B'yahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai Mikadesh HaShabbat.
Amen.
L'chaim.
So, Glenn, can you make sure that you know Shimshon? And Seth, can you make sure that you know Shimshon? I know that Glenn and Seth know each other, but say hello. Lechu.
Lechuneranena,
Page 12.
lechuneranena, lechuneranena, ladonai.
Let us
Page
raise
12.
it up to God.
Lechuneranena, 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 ladonai. Naria, naria, litzor yishenu, nikadma, fana bitoda. Naria, naria, litzor yishenu, Pizmirot, naria lo. Lechuneranena, 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 ladonai. Lechuneranena, 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 ladonai. page 13.
Thank you.
And then we're going to go to page 44. Don't get lost on your way. The bottom paragraph of 13. Yismechu hashamayim.
Hashamayim.
Yismechu hashamayim.
Hashamayim.
Yismechu hashamayim. V'tagel haaretz. Yeram hayam. Yeram hayam. Yeram hayam. Umalo. Yeram hayam. Yeram hayam, Yeram hayam, umalo. Yeram hayam, Yeram hayam, Yeram hayam, relative major. Yeram hayam, Yeram hayam, Yeram hayam, umalo. Oh, and we go all the way to page 44.
If I were a rich man.
It's like making it out of Egypt. It's so far, but there's no Red Sea.
Raise it up. We will rejoice.
Okay, the bottom of page 44. We are so happy to be here together on Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Aha, Mekadeshei, Mekadeshei Shevi Shabbat. Kulam Yisbe'u, V'yitangu mitu v'chashabat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Hashvita bo, Ratzita bo v'kiddushto Shabbat.
Chemdan yamim.
Ratzita bo v'kiddushto Shabbat. Whoops. Yismechu v'malachutecha, Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Chemdad yamim, oto karata Shabbat. Zeicher l'maseh v'reishit Shabbat.
Shabbos.
Yismechu. Got to work on my zeicher. Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat.
Yismechu v'malachutecha,
Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei oneg
Page 20, the Chadodi, come, my beloved. Come to the garden. Sing that song of songs, the love song especially, on this Pesach Shabbat.
So this is a very special melody from Uganda, from the Abba Yudaya people of Uganda, Jewish folks in Uganda. And we are going to, as always here at Beth-El, we're going to do verses 1 and 2. And then at verse 5, we're going to change melodies, and then we will skip to verse 9. Oh, wow, that sounds weird. Shabbat
Fifth stanza.
לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. Fifth. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך ומאורי, אורי, אורי, שידברי כבוד אדוני עלייך בגלל. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה.
Please rise if you're able. Face the door in anticipation.
בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה. תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה.
Please remain standing and turn to page 28 for the Baruch. This is our call to prayer. The rest was just a wake-up call. Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach.
Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam vaed. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam vaed.
This Mariv Aravim, it's Mekodesh Lakodesh. For those of us who keep 8 days of Passover, we're moving from one sacred day to another sacred day. Different flavor, different flavors of Kedusha, of holiness.
Ya da da ya 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 da ya da da ya 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 da
Skillfully opening the gates, thoughtfully altering the time and changing the seasons.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam
Arranging the stars in their heavenly
Asher
course.
bidvaro ma'ariv aravim ariv
Speaking the
aravim
evening into being.
בחוכמו פותח שערים ובתבונה משנה איתי
All according to plan.
ומחליף את הזמנים ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם ברקיע קיצונו
Creator of day and night.
Yada
Pulling light away from darkness. Transforming day into night. And distinguishing one from the other. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Baruch atah Adonai, Amariv Aravim. 32, with a great love, you've offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah, mitzvot,
אהבת עולם בית ישראל
laws,
אהבת
precepts,
תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים אותנו לימדת
So when we lie
על
down,
כן אדוני אלוהינו בשוכבנו
meditate on your love,
ובקומנו נשיח בחוקיך
your laws,
ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם
forever and ever.
ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגע יומם ולילה יומם ולילה ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. Page 34. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Page 36. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשכבך ובקומך וקשתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם
במזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
אמת ואמונה כל זאת וקיים עלינו כי הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואין זולתו, אנחנו ישראל עמו. We hold all this to be true and trustworthy for us, that you alone are our God and we are Israel, your people. You work wonders without number, marvels beyond count. You give us life and steady our footsteps. You perform miracles for us before Pharaoh, signs and wonders in the land of the Egyptians. You led your people Israel from their midst to freedom for all time. And they accepted your sovereignty. Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang to you together, lifting their voices on the other side of that sea. Who is like you? Micha Mocha, page 40. That's what they sang.
Ay ay da 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 ya da 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 ram pai ba da 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 ya da 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 ay da 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 ya da 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 mi khamocha Ba'ili Madonai mi kamocha nehda b'kodesh norati lot o sefele norati lot o sefele ay 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 da 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 ya da 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 oy 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 da da ya da 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 ay da 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 ya da 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 Oy, 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 מלכות אחרי ובניך, בוקר ים לפני משה ומרים, זה אלינו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
42. Tuck us in, O God, with your wings of safety, surety, love.
השכיבנו אדוני לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך.
ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך לחיים ושלום מעתה ועד עולם. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים.
ברוך אתה אדוני Haporei Sukkot Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim.
Please rise for our private conversation with our sovereign, our leader, our God, our creator. Page 46.
Adonai Sifatai Tiftach Ufi Hagi Tehilatecha.
Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor HaNorah,
El Elyon
Mel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, Zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot, U'mevii Gula Livnei Bneihem, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, תומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה.
נאמן אתה להחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני
מחיי המתים. אתה קדוש שמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יעלוך סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. תשים לעולם כי אתה מלך אדוני כל שלום וטוב ינך לברך את
On page 62.
Who
Yoshve Tevel Ay ya da 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 Yose Shalom Bimroma Huyase Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel V'imru Ay ya da 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 ay 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 da 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 da
Please keep playing that. Create a pure heart within me. Let my soul wake up in your light. Open me to your presence. Flood me with your Holy Spirit. Then I will stand and sing out the power of your forgiveness. I will teach your love to the lonely. The lost will find their way home. Adonai, open up my lips, and my mouth will declare your praise. Page 253, a prayer for healing.
Mishe be'era chavotenu Hora bracha holimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. And let us say, Amen.
This week we're especially thinking of Howard Simon, Gloria Berkowitz, Gittel Bat Chana, Beryl Ben Sima Vishmuel Leib, Steve Gellis, Sholem Avram Ben Golda Yeshayahu, Harav Miriam Yael Chaya Bat Sarah Yitzchak, Maxwell Swain, Menachem Mendel Ben Yehudit Michael, Luke Wright, Chendel Chaya Rafaela Bat Yehudit Sharon, Dolores Mikkel, Harav Eliyahu Ben Miriam Avraham, James Janelle and Bill Edgar, Elia Tario, Vivian Chong, Wendy Chong, Devorah Bat David Vachaya, Lou Boriello, Harav Yafa Rachel Bat Bela Chana Moshe Yitzchak, Kedem Ben Shoshana Beruvain, John Spiegel, Yisrael Hirsch Ben Gedalia Rivka Hinda, Maxwell Bayer, Shmuel Ben Leah, Yaakov Avina Bat Shloima Verivka, and to these names we add.
Sorabela Basrivka.
Simmer Sabatina.
Misher Beirachim Otenu Mekor HaBracha Bless those in a need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
May they know healing uneventfully. So, Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach. I was going to just tell some stories, and I thought we'd just share some Seder stories. I don't know if it was just the people that we're with, or it's just, I don't know, this year, but every day leading up to Pesach and at both of my Seders, people were asking about, like, what's up with this beans and rice and kitniot and Sephardic and Ashkenazi and, well, you know, why are we talking about this now and what's going on? And so I found a story that, I don't know, I thought I'd share. Anybody have anything particularly interesting or different happen at your Seder this year? Yes, Cantor Jeff? No, Cantor Jeff had his hands up first.
Okay, well, I have a great Seder story for later if you want, but my interest peaked when you mentioned video. I'm a conservative Jew by training and by predilection, and a while back, our movement allowed Ashkenazim to keep video right before it was, and I am both. I keep kosher, of course, and I'm diabetic. And I can't eat the Pesach food that I grew up with. I mean, I was just bad for me. So, boy, we had brown rice and risotto last night. You know, lentils. God, what a relief. So great. I feel so healthy. Pesach is much, much better.
Do you know why the conservative movement passed the Teshuvah? Do you know where it came from?
I don't.
So Galinkin, he's in Israel. He's a halachist. He's out of Israel, and he was the one that originated. And originally, it was just for those Jews that live in the land of Israel, and because unlike in the United States, in Israel, there's pretty even mix between Ashkenazi Jews and Mizrahi/Sephardi Jews. And so after, 50, 60 years in Israel, what you'd have is a lot of these like intermarriages, which is what my story is about. And all of these, sort of family squabbles of, well, my family does this and my family does this, and what are we going to do here? And so it's because of the number of, if you will, sort of intermarriages, not quite intermarriages, between Ashkenazi and Mizrahi Jews in Israel, Galinkin says, if you're taking Passover seriously, meaning you're cutting out wheat, barley, oats, spelt, and rye, it's hard enough. We don't need to cut out any more. And so it was permitted for Israeli Jews, and then it kind of morphed into United States as well.
And my understanding is even if you're Ashkenazi but living in Israel, the principle of following the rules of the land. And so a lot of people will do just for that reason, because now it's the rule of the land. And also traditionally they're not making fake stuff.
Yeah. Does everybody know why or where? I mean, traditionally, Mishnayically, right, it says really clear, you're not supposed to have anything made from these 5 grains. 5 grains, wheat, barley, oats, spelt, and rye. And so where did this whole thing about, like, rice and corn and all of these other things? Well, never to be outdone in terms of, like, just in case, the Ashkenazim, and sometime in the Middle Ages, basically said, somebody might mistake a pile of wheat flour for a pile of corn flour, and just in case they might mistake the wheat flour for the corn flour, better outlaw it all. And this is actually where it actually comes from. So, yeah. So, anybody have anything interesting going on at their Seders this year, or different? Yeah, Ben. Hi, Dad. You mean like you're ransoming it? You can ask for any ransom you want. But oh, why not 137? Why not 137? Oh, goodness. Well, this year our Seder completely changed because this year the grandchildren were sort of old enough to turn the Seder into a pediatric Seder. So after years of it being an adult experience, no, now it's pediatric. No, we're not geriatric yet. But then second Seder, and this is a warning to any of you who try to lead a Seder and can do dinner at the same time. We had a fire. Some grease was dripping down in the oven, and there was a fire in the oven, and half of what was in the oven we had to throw away. Good thing I made a lot more food. Everybody was fine. The oven still needs to be cleaned, but it is a story for the ages. When you go to the rabbi's house and then there's a fire in the oven.
Were there traditional sacrifices on Pesach, bird sacrifices?
No, but everybody was so sad about having to throw away so much that they were reading the ingredients in the fire extinguisher to see if we could actually eat them. I'm like, no, we're not gonna eat those chemicals. Anyway, so so that was an interesting one. So I found this story, stories about stories, and this was actually written by a Sephardic man who used to write a piece for the New York Jewish papers in the beginning of the 20th century. This column was picked up in New York by the Sephardic Home News, which comes out of the Sephardic Home for the Aged on Cropsey Avenue in Brooklyn, but goes out to the Sephardic communities across the country. And he was born in 1917, and he wrote this when reminiscing about his younger days. A Jew who didn't speak Yiddish, Ashkenazi and Sephardic cultural differences. Let's go back a few years to our grade school days. That's when we first became aware that we, the Sephardim, were different. The first days in school were not easy for us Sephardic children. That was when we came to realize that we were different from our Ashkenazi co-religionists. I, for one, could not speak English when I entered kindergarten. I spoke Ladino, the language of the Sephardim. And for the first time, our last names were brought to our attention, names like Abulafia, Abrevaya, Amira, Zacudo, Candiotti, Kerazi, Crespi, Forma, Gormezano, Halio, Massa, Motola, Penso, Roditi, Sefardi, Saporta, Strugo, Susi, Tolenado, Varsono, Yochai, and many, many more, most of them ending in a vowel that set them apart and gave the Ashkenazi a reason to believe that we were not Jewish. Well, we took off from school on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and all the other Jewish holidays, and when we returned to school the next day, our teachers would ask us, why were we absent? And we said we were absent because it was a Jewish holiday. Both the Jewish kids and the Gentile kids would laugh at us. They didn't believe us. With your name, how can you say you're Jewish? Which of us at the age of 6 or 7 or 8 knew about the Spanish Inquisition or the expulsion? Which of us knew how to explain it to our teachers? We just insisted we were Jewish. The next step was bring a note from your parents. That's when panic set in. Many of our parents had little schooling, and most couldn't read or write English well enough in those days to write a comprehensible letter. Now comes the kicker. When we became old enough to appreciate the charms and fascinations of the opposite sex, our troubles really began. We rarely made dates with the Sephardic girls, although many of us married them, because if we were seen with a Sephardic girl more than once, the whole community would have had us engaged and ready for marriage. Most of us dated Yiddish girls. Can't you just hear our folks say, "Mira, hojo que se está indo con una Yiddisha? No puede topar una de las muestras? Look at that nice fellow who's going with a Yiddish girl. Can't he find one of ours?" Sound familiar? Hardly any of us dated non-Jewish girls. A new problem arose. The parents of Yiddish girls would want to meet the boyfriend. Can you picture this? Can you picture what happened at the first encounter? We were introduced by our first names only. Then the parents would speak to us in Yiddish. And when they saw the blank look on our faces, they turned to their daughters and asked, is nit a Yid? El no as Judio? Isn't he Jewish? Did I say that all wrong? How do you say it in Yiddish? Is nit a Yid. Anyway, you say you're Jewish, but you don't speak Yiddish. How can you say you're a Jew? Some of us had the urge to say, "You don't speak Spanish. How could you be Jewish?" But being a well-brought-up Sephardic boy, we didn't. To try to prove we were indeed Jewish, we recited some Hebrew prayers, but our pronunciation of Hebrew is different from that of the Ashkenazi, and they didn't believe us. A certain perverse thought crossed the minds of some of the wise guys, a surefire way of proving that we were Jewish. But I don't think any of us used it. Once the reality that the Sephardim were actually Jewish was established, the language barrier was surmounted, and the parties involved were convinced that we were, in fact, Jewish. And we thought our troubles were over. Far from it. It was inevitable that there would be mixed marriages. At the turn of the century, it was tantamount to marrying out of the religion. There was much speculation how the bride and groom were, how are they going to get along? Como se van a spara? No, como se van a pasar? A lot more was said about how the cosuegros, or the machatunim, the in-laws, were going to relate and communicate with one another. The Ashkenazim were as apprehensive as the Sephardim in trying to cope with the myriad problems the bride and groom were going to face. Our customs, the culture, were literally continents apart. Our cuisine was different. We, the Sephardim, celebrated the Jewish holidays in a slightly different manner. The way our services were conducted in the synagogue was not the same. And the greatest conflict in relations among the husbands and wives and in-laws was when it came to naming the children. The Sephardim named the progeny for the living, and the Ashkenazim for the departed. And with a good deal of research, I was able to understand the merits of both sides of the question. I'm always asked, why do you name your children for the living? And my answer is typically Jewish. I answer the question with another question. Why not? There is no Hebraic law that dictates how the children are to be named in either culture. It's a matter of superstition and custom. It was the custom of the Sephardim for the firstborn boy to receive the name of the paternal grandfather, the firstborn girl to receive the name of the paternal grandmother, and the secondborn boy to receive the name of the maternal grandfather, and the secondborn girl to receive the name of the maternal grandmother. And this was done whether those individuals were living or dead, and thus the phrase, "they name for the living." And this was considered sacrilegious by the Ashkenazi and was the hardest thing to reconcile. I was named for my grandfather, who was alive at the time. I was born in America, and he was living in Turkey. Even though I had never seen him, I always felt I was somebody. I had an identity. I'm looking forward to the day when little Hank will be named for me. My mother was very proud when my first daughter was named for her, and so was my wife when our first grandchild Phoebe was named for her. And when our second daughter was born, I suggested to my mother-in-law, a wonderful Ashkenazi lady, that it was her prerogative to name this child. Her answer was, by all means, give her my name. Everything changes when the grandchildren come. Anybody know what the superstition is behind that? Why the Ashkenazim don't name them after? Yeah, that the superstition is that by naming a baby after somebody living, that you're going to steal a little bit of their life force, and it will come out of them, shorten their life because it will go into the baby. So, God forbid that you should shorten their life. You only do it for somebody that's. Yeah, some. My grandfather was German Jew, and he was not going to be naming it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, you could take it to that kind of extreme for sure. So interesting, right? The whole idea at the turn of the century, nobody was marrying outside of the religion, but the Ashkenazim and the Sephardim seeing like it's almost like a mixed marriage. Yeah. So, any other interesting differences that have crept into your Siddharim or your Jewish practice from either the other side of the Jewish landscape or other cultures? We talked about the rice and beans, yeah? Anybody incorporate any of the other anything? One of the most interesting things I've experienced. I had Seder a couple of years ago. My brother-in-law, and instead of horseradish, he put out wasabi, and instead of gefilte fish, it was sushi grade tuna. Has anybody been to a Seder where they take out leeks or shallots and they start beating yourself? That's a Sephardi practice. When we were slaves, avadim hayinu, I understand that you're like either beating yourself or you're beating the person next to you with leeks or shallots. I think it's shallots. Yeah. Time to reclaim some of them. Well, yeah, the music is incredible. Being able to reclaim some of the Sephardic and the East, not only for the Spanish influence, but also the Mizrahi, the wonderful tones and rhythms of the Mizrahi world. It really enriches it. There was another story that I found that I thought I'd share, because we got into a conversation about Elijah, and who's Elijah? Anybody know why we open the door for Elijah at the Seder? Why do we open the door for Elijah? Go ahead. Propitious time. Yeah, it's not something we talk a lot about, this idea of Messiah, right? That's like a Christian-y thing. And we don't spend a lot of time in Judaism talking about the days of Messiah, unless, of course, you're in Chabad, and then they're yelling out, Mashiach, Mashiach, right? But we're still waiting, right? You know, the two famous stories, Seth, you've heard me tell this story, okay, but, you know, and actually this one comes from the Talmud, that's how old and how long it's been, right? If you're planting a tree and somebody says, come, hurry, come to the entrance of the town. The Messiah has arrived. Come, let's go greet the Messiah. The Talmud says, finish planting the tree, then go greet the Messiah. And in the same ilk, you know, Shlomi and Yankel having this conversation, and Shlomi is thrilled. Shlomi just got a brand new job. Yankel wants to know, no, Shlomi, tell me what's the name of the job? What's the job? What are you doing? He says, I have been hired to stand outside the city gates and wait for the Messiah so that when he arrives, somebody is there to greet him. And Yankel says, fabulous, what a great job. What does it pay? He says, a shekel a week, or if you will, a kopek, a shekel a week. And Yankel goes, a shekel a week? What? You could get a much better job. I mean, that pays nothing. It pays bubkas. What kind of job is that? And Shlomi says, true, the pay is low, but it's steady work. So this is us with the Messiah, right? So we trust that one day the Messiah, or the Messianic age, which is a more modern, I think a more liberal, and to my mind, a more realistic way to understand when it will be that the lion can lie down with the lamb, and everyone beneath their vine and fig tree will be at peace and unafraid, and we will beat our swords into plowshares, and nor shall we learn war anymore. And as the scriptures say about that. So this is a story of the staff of Elijah. Long ago, there was an old man who had once been very wealthy and had given charity willingly, but in his old age he'd found himself impoverished. His neighbors remembered how generous he had been when he had been rich, so that they often invited him to their homes and saw to it that his needs were met. Once, when the Sabbath was over, the old man returned home, lit a candle, and was startled to find a Jew sitting on his bed. The old man was taken aback and said, "Who are you?" The stranger did not answer directly, but instead asked a question of his own. "Tell me, may I remain in your home for a few days? I've been traveling far and wide, and I need a place to rest." The old man replied, "Certainly you may stay, but what shall you eat? For I myself am dependent on the kindness of others." The stranger said no matter, and remained as a guest of the old man. The two shared the old man's food, meager as it was, and the stranger accompanied the old man to the synagogue. After 3 days, the stranger prepared to depart. But before he set out, he said to the old man, "You have been so kind to me, and I wish to repay you, but all I have is this staff. Take it. It will help you. But someday you will have to return it to its place." Now these were strange words, which the old man did not understand. "Where's the place?" he asked. And the stranger replied, "On Mount Carmel." This confused the old man even more, for Mount Carmel is in the Holy Land, far away from where the old man made his home. "Who are you?" he asked. And the stranger revealed that he was none other than Elijah, the prophet. And when the old man heard this, he was afraid, overcome and thrilled all at once. He accepted the staff from Elijah with many thanks and accompanied him to the door and saw him off. But when Elijah had taken but a few steps, he disappeared from the old man's sight. And the old man realized that this truly had been the prophet of old. Now we know that, right, when Elijah comes, this is the harbinger of Messiah. And we're also taught that Elijah shows up relatively frequently, and depending on how it is that he's greeted and how he's treated, is what decides whether the world is ready for Messiah or not. And most often Elijah shows up in rags, distraught, rather unpleasant fellow, or unpleasant looking, and usually is not greeted very well, and thus he decides the world is not ready for redemption. But in this story, the old man soon discovered the powers of the staff. And once when he had walked a long distance and was feeling faint, he sat down at the edge of the road and placed his staff so that only his feet touched it. At once he felt his strength renewed, as though he had become much younger. He was able to stand up easily and returned home full of life. And after that he used the staff to revive himself whenever he began to feel the burden of his age. And his spirits always lifted at the instant his feet touched the wondrous staff. The next day the old man took the staff with him when he went to the market, and when he was walking, the staff suddenly became stuck in the crack between the stones. The old man bent down to pull it out, and when he did, he found several silver pieces in the shadow of the staff. What a blessing, he thought, for now he would be able to support himself again and even have enough money to give to charity. One night, the old man was awakened by the sound of screams and cries, and he ran outside with the staff in his hands to see what was happening, and he discovered that the Jewish quarter had been invaded by a mob who were trying to set it afire. And suddenly the old man felt filled with great strength, and he ran directly into the mob, swinging the staff. And the other Jews marveled at the old man's courage and took heart, and they too joined the fight. And in this way the rioters were quickly defeated, and never again did they dare to attack the Jewish quarter. And after this, the old man became a hero among the Jews of the town, and they decided to collect enough money for him to fulfill his lifelong wish of going to the Holy Land. And so it was that he was able to make the journey after all, despite his age. After many, many months, his ship arrived in Jaffa, and the old man disembarked. His wish was to travel to the Wailing Wall, the Kotel in Jerusalem, but somehow he ended up in a wagon heading for Svat. When the wagon was crossing Mount Carmel, one of its wheels broke off, and there was nothing that could be done until the wheel was repaired, which would take some time. So to pass the time, the old man took a walk on the mountain, and along the way he spotted a tree from which a branch had been cut off. He walked closer, examined it thoroughly, and marveled that the wood of the tree was so similar to that of his staff. He raised up the staff against that place in the tree to compare it, and at the instant it touched the tree. It fused to it and turned into one of the branches. And while the old man watched in complete amazement, the branch began to bud and bear leaves, so that it soon resembled every other branch of that tree. It was then that the old man recalled the words of Elijah and understood that his mission was complete. The staff of Elijah had been returned to its place of origin. And with a wonderful feeling, the old man returned to the wagon just as the wheel was ready for travel, and he continued on his journey. And after visiting the holy city of Tzfat, he traveled to Jerusalem, as he had first intended, and before long reached the Kotel, the Wailing Wall. As he stood and prayed before the wall, a gust of wind carried a leaf, and it fell just before his feet. And when the old man bent down and picked it up, somehow he knew He knew for certain that it was a leaf from the tree from which the staff had been taken. The old man kept that leaf, and miraculously it remained green all the long years of his life, and he lived many, many more years in the Holy Land, the happiest he had ever known. That story was from Romania. Leaves from the Garden of Eden, Howard Schwartz. 100 Classic Jewish Tales. And the other one is Because God Loves Stories. Steve Zeitlin. So here's to the stories that we tell at the Seder table to each other. And may we keep continuing to tell stories and keep those stories alive. Ooh, I'm stuck. Okay, here we go. All right, let's finish with Aleinu. Page 282. Not particularly. I guess so. Hashevota,
Hashevota,
el levavecha, ki Adonai, hu ha-Elohim, v'hashevota, el levavecha, ki Adonai, hu ha-Elohim, v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo You may be seated. If I'm reading the name of your loved one, I invite you to rise in place. We're observing the yard site of Lennox McKell and Nathan Schnur. Is there anyone else who's either observing a yard site or who is in their year of mourning? I invite you to honor them, saying their name out loud with the Mourner's Kaddish on page 294. Or if it is your custom to rise for the Kaddish, I invite you to do so as well. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba.
Amen.
Be'alma divrach erutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru.
Amen.
Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach le'olam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shmei dekudesha brichu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru.
Amen.
Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru. Amen.
Okay, coming up at Temple Beth-El, get your borscht on. Our evening of comedy and community is on June 10th and will feature Ariel Elias and Carrie Louise. It's our most important fundraiser and fundraiser of the year and key to the temple meeting our operating budget. Please start asking the businesses that you frequent now if they'll place a congratulatory ad in the Borscht Journal. Remind them that a lot of people attend and will be looking at the journal. Tickets are on sale, and the ad journal form is on our website. Yes, we're actually decided at the board meeting that there will be a contest to see who sells the most ads. So we do keep track. Yeah, we do keep track. I don't count because I have a lot of people who come every year. I'm not sure. There will definitely be awards. So. That's right. Your favorite restaurants. My produce store always does. So number 2. Keep your eyes open for Hudson Gives. The actual Hudson Gives Day is May 11th, and you will see a lot of different Hudson County charities mentioning it. This will be our second year of doing Hudson Gives. The campaign actually starts May 2nd at 12:01 and goes until May 18th at 11:59. And there'll be a competition there too. People can become fundraisers, and there'll be competitions for which people get the most people to respond to their social media and and then there'll be competitions for who raises the most money. 2 ways to win. Reminder that religious school is closed this Sunday due to the Passover vacation. And a Yizkor memorial service will take place on Thursday, April 13th from 9 to 10 in the morning. It will be by Zoom. The link is in the weekly. It's posted on our website. It's on the newsletter. Now, number 5. Rosa Escandon and Samuel Wild will celebrate their Ufruf under the Shkupa at Shabbat services on April 14th. And it's a very exciting night because it's Rabbi's son. Well, and Rosa, who everybody remembers from the religious school. Our next wine and cheese preneg will be Friday, April 21st at 7:15. And our next Tat Shabbat is April 22 at 10:30. Come to services and double your mitzvah points. Seth will teach you how to just push a couple of buttons so that you can be watching a live stream if you couldn't make it here. I'm talking to you guys. If you're going to come and you've liked live streaming, make sure you talk to Seth so that when you are here, you can go in. You see, he's here in the audience. He just starts it and he ends it. It's real simple. Are you still squeamish about returning to services? We do have a mask required section of the sanctuary for people who feel most comfortable sitting near other masked people. And change the world one meal at a time with 1 hour out of your week. Help feed our hungry and homeless neighbors Thursdays at 4 at our food pantry. If you don't have an hour, you can feed them with a donation for the food we buy. Details are on the website. Your donations for the social hall renovations are still very much needed, and that's why Hudson Gives is going to be really, really, really important this year, because all the money from Hudson Gives is going to the capital campaign. We raised $12,000 last year with 87 donors. I had like 4 or 5 fundraisers besides myself and my husband, and we were going on social media, and we did this in the last 2 days of the campaign, and we got 87 donors. Imagine what we can get if every person who loves Temple Beth-El, says, I want you to support this. Every little bit counts because there's competitions for which charity gets the most donors. You look at the website, we'll be posting when there's competitions that are underwritten by, there's minutes. Like if everybody does it at 12:01, last year we won the minute, the 12:01 minute. I don't know. Could be. They maybe learned from us. So that's it. Oh, and if you can also check if your employer makes matching donations, because that can be done on the Hudson Gives website also. So a lot going on. Come and join us. Shabbat Shalom and Hag Pesach Sameach.
Yeah.
How are we closing this baby out, Cantor Jeff?
I think the rabbi had a really good idea. We're going to sing Adon Olam, which is on page 321, but to a special holiday melody.
I think you know this.
I think you know that. Adon Olam Hashem Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Le'et Nasa V'chefso Kol Hazayim Melech Shemo Nikra V'yacharei Kiklot HaKol Levado Yimloch Norav V'hu Haya V'hu Hoveh V'hu Yeh B'tifara והוא אחד ואין שני להמשיל לו להכבירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית ולא העוז והמשרה והוא אלי וחי גולי וצור חבלי בצרה והוא ניצי ומנוס לי מנת כוסי ביום אקרא בידו הפקיד רוחי בעת תישן ואירה ועם רוחי גבייתי אדוני לי ולא אירא אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נשא בחפצו כל אזי ומלך שמו נקרא. And that's enough.
And we have all kinds of kosher for Passover goodies, including there's even some kosher for Passover tiramisu.
What?
This new Jewish deli in town. So
Ooh.
it's not that much, but try it. You betcha.
Fell flat. It's matzah.